I was
It's
gonna,
all that shit.
I was gonna say
Look at
that.
this hole. Look at this hole. This is fucking bullshit.
All right, well, take
I mean,
pictures.
anything. I will. I
Take,
will. Don't
listen,
worry.
take pictures that don't make it look like we're
I
trashy.
know. I know. I'm gonna pick the little letters up and the other stuff and leave the other things. But I just throw everything away. Like this stuff. This is the only stuff I have not thrown away. The top of the refrigerator, and then this stuff. But this is all just sitting on the very top, and the letters go on the front. And this, I think this is a poster or something that I don't want to throw it away, so I'm keeping it. But it's got stuff all over it. I'm
That's
gonna
glow
throw.
sticks. Throw them away.
Okay. All right. But yeah, this is so.
Yeah, get all that stuff up and then send me pictures of the floor and send me pictures of the back of the fridge backed up from it and then get a close up of the with the flash of the where it's bent out.
And then I was gonna finish cleaning the fridge because I cleaned the top of it. I cleaned out everything and wiped it down. But then I was like, oh fuck it, I don't want to clean the rest of it because I didn't.
Well,
It's mostly cheese and some paper.
and then make sure there's nothing up in that cabinet when you take a picture of that hole,
Right.
especially that stuffing, and then show the other hole on the other side of the cabinet.
Yeah.
All right, we'll do that, and then I'll wait till you do that, and I'll call her after that. All right,
Alright.
love
Thank you.
you. Bye.
Oh, hey, wait, I lied. There was more. This was up there, but I have it hanging here. And Benji was up there, but he's up there now.
All right,
So, I love you.
love you.
Alright, bye.
Bye.
Eventually, she walks around and finds there's an elevator. And so she's like, all right, I'll just get in the elevator and go up. And so she gets in this beautiful elevator. She shuts the door. She hits the button to go to the next floor. And as the car begins to move, she realizes, like, this is going to make some noise. Like, someone's going to hear me. Like, oh my gosh, now I'm going to get caught. And so she starts to freak out. And so she pulls out her big, clunky Nokia cell phone and she calls her mom. And when her mom picks up, she tells her that, you know what, almost certainly I'm about to get arrested here. And as her mom is like, what are you doing? What is going on here? The elevator that Rose is in came to a stop, and the door opened up. And as soon as Rose saw what was in front of her, she just lowered the phone, her mom still talking into it, and just stared. It was like she was totally struck by what she was seeing. Because right in front of her, in the room right outside of this elevator, is the person who owns this house. The extremely famous major celebrity who's just sitting there with a guitar, strumming along, just minding his own business. And he turns and looks at Rose, and Rose is looking at him, and there's this moment of just stunned silence. Like neither of them can really figure out how this even came to be. Now, at this point, Rose knew it was her chance. And so and has no idea what's about to happen. She just quickly walks a little bit forward into the room and throws her demo CD onto this table that was sort of between the two of them. And this big time musician is just like, again, standing there staring at her like, what are you doing here? And after Rose did that, she didn't say anything. She just turned, headed back to the elevator, and began to make her escape. But by the time she made it back to the front door, this big time musician's security team did catch up to her and they stopped her. However, they did decide not to call the police. And so Rose was very lucky that she escaped without a criminal record, which is sort of incredible when you consider the home she actually broke into. This was the home of Prince.
Hello.
Again, arguably at the time, one of the most famous people in the world. I mean, it's bad enough sneaking into anybody's home, but this is like egregious. So the idea that she got right up next to Prince and gave him her demo CD without consequence, pretty incredible. But despite all this, her interaction with Prince really didn't have any bearing on her career. He didn't care at all about her demo CD. He did not, throw her name out to industry contacts and, blow her career up. Basically, he said, I won't press charges, now get out of here. That was it. However, Rose did go on to become an incredibly famous musician in her own right. She just did it without the help of Prince. Today, Rose's tracks go multi-platinum, and she's sold more than 100 million copies of her records. Rose is actually her middle name. You very likely know her by her stage name, which is also her actual first name, and that is Kesha. Last year, we launched a brand new podcast here at Ballin Studios called Redacted: Declassified Mysteries with Luke LaManna. And so far, you guys have loved it. And in case you haven't heard, we also launched a YouTube channel for Redacted, where you can not only listen to these episodes, but also watch the beautiful animations we've done for each of these episodes. That channel already has 150,000 subscribers, and it's growing really quickly, and there are hours of content available right now for you to binge. New uploads to this YouTube channel will be every single Tuesday. All you have to do is look up @Redacted Mysteries on YouTube, and I'll also be putting a link in the description below. Wondery Plus subscribers can also watch Redacted on the Wondery app. Okay, back to the stories. One day in 2008, a 50-year-old man named Carlo was at his home in Connecticut reviewing all this financial documentation. So Carlo had filed for bankruptcy a few years earlier, and it had proven to be very complicated. And there was all this paperwork he was still getting, and his bankruptcy case had not even finalized yet. And so what he thought would be sort of like a quick fix to a huge problem had turned into a really complicated mess, and now he had even more paperwork to sign. I mean, it was totally overwhelming. So Carlo was an actor, and in many ways, he had had lots of success. He had been on Broadway, he had starred in shows and movies, like he was a respected actor with lots of contacts in the industry. But despite that, he hadn't really ever made it. Like, he couldn't really consistently land high-paying or even consistent work, period. And so despite his reputation as being a very talented actor, it really wasn't translating to financial success. Now, this situation that Carlo was in would not have been that bad if he was single, but he wasn't. He was married with 4 children to take care of. And on top of that, Carlo also felt this really intense pressure that was sort of maybe felt in the industry in general, in the sort of entertainment industry, to keep up with his appearances. As much as he was struggling financially, he felt like he didn't want his peers to know that that might eat into his ability to get big roles. And so he's got all this pressure to take care of his family and all this pressure to maintain this idea that he's really successful and doing great. But in reality, he just felt like a total fraud. He had no money, and he felt like he didn't even know how he was going to dig himself out again. And so as Carlo is sitting there staring at this mountain of paperwork, he started to have this very dark thought that had sort of crept into his mind a couple of times over the past few months, as this huge issue just continued to get bigger and bigger. But now, this dark idea had become fully realized in his mind. He began to think, maybe if I were to die, there could be a large insurance payout to my family. That would solve their financial problems, and it would also sort of, abscond me from looking like the fraud that I really am. Nobody would know. I'd be dead. They wouldn't know that I had all these issues. I'd just, be gone, and people would miss me and my family. They'd be financially taken care of. Maybe that's a possibility. Obviously Carlo was not trying to end his life because he didn't want to be here anymore. He just felt like he did not have another way out. And so he actually went to his wife and began sort of, nonchalantly asking her questions about their, various insurance plans to see if he had a good life insurance policy that would pay out if he were to go. And eventually he got his wife to tell him that, yeah, you have a very generous life insurance policy. We are good if, the worst were to happen and something were to happen to you. And at that point, Carlo felt like, that's it. That's the way to fix this problem. I need to die. However, when Carlo actually did begin researching this route, seeing exactly how, an insurance payout would work if he were to take his own life, he quickly learned that, payouts after a suicide on these life insurance plans are very complicated. And there's all these stipulations involved because, insurance companies do not want people taking their own life in order to get these payouts. And so Carlo was quickly seeing that if he were to take his life, it would not be like, okay, quick payout to his family. Quite the opposite. And in some cases, his family might not even be entitled to this payout. And so Carlo's thinking, well, okay, I can't take my own life. I need to find another way to have my life come to an end. And so he's thinking, okay, I'll start picking up really dangerous hobbies, and maybe I can sort of die by accident. Maybe I'll start hang gliding and fall out of my harness, and that'll be the way I die, and maybe that'll lead to a payout. Or I'll start doing base jumping, or all these different things that might reasonably explain why he suddenly died. But he also was thinking, people would see through that. I'm not the type of guy that picks up really dangerous hobbies, and so that could be kind of suspicious. He's like, okay, well, what else could I do? And he's like, oh, I could hire a hitman. Somebody else will kill me, and then, that's not my fault. Somebody else took my life. That'll allow for a payout, right? But, the more he thought about it, the more that, too, seemed highly suspicious. I mean, people don't usually get away with hired hits. And so several months go by, and Carlo is still alive, because he's basically discovered that there really isn't a way to intentionally end his life, directly or indirectly, without getting caught and sort of jeopardizing the one thing he wants this to do, which is to have this payout for his family. And so he's just sort of stuck in this situation that he does not feel like he can get out of. Like, he's just completely buried by debt and this general financial crisis he's in. And so Carlo was doing really the only thing he knew he could do, which is just to get out there and audition for as many shows and movies and various acting opportunities as he possibly could to at least, get some amount of money coming in, even though clearly it was still never going to be enough. But in late 2008, Carlo got an interesting call from his agent who worked to get him some of these roles. Now, Carlo's agent, who did understand Carlo was in dire straits here, quickly explained to Carlo that, this role didn't really pay much, but, you'd be able to be a part of a very big show. I mean, yeah, your role is sort of minimal, but this is huge. It's a big credit, and, maybe it lends itself to you getting other work. This could be a great opportunity for you. Now, Carlo had heard his agent sort of pitch him on various roles and the opportunity and all that before, and so he was grateful to be, told this is a good opportunity, but he was sort of skeptical. But he received the script, and he began reading about, what his character would be doing in the show. And he quickly realized that, this role actually might be more perfect for me than even the producers and directors might realize. So this role was for this particular character on the show who sort of, in the show, hides in plain sight. Like, that's sort of the way they need to be portrayed. They're this huge influential character in one way, but to the eye of the audience, they sort of look like a nobody. They're sort of, again, hiding in plain sight. And Carlo, in his own life, very much felt like he was sort of hiding in plain sight. To his peers in the industry, he's this acclaimed actor who's getting all these roles and everything's so great. He's a family man with 4 kids, but privately, he's living this hell. He's got all this financial debt. He's considered killing himself for an insurance payout to pay for his life. Like, he's living a completely double life here. And so he felt like, I know how to hide in plain sight. It's literally what I do every day. That's my actual life. And so he takes this role, and Carlo does such a world-class job portraying this character who hides in plain sight that the director and all these people who are working on the show, they're like, oh my goodness, Carlo is incredible, and this character that he's portraying, we gotta find a way to expand this character and make them more meaningful in this show. And so they quickly began writing in additional scenes into this big time show for Carlo's character. Again, not because the character was so good, but because Carlo was so good at portraying that character. And as this character's role grew in the show itself began to succeed even more. Like, the audience was like, wow, we love that character. And so the character only grew and became a staple in this show. And it ultimately completely changed Carlo's life. Not only because this would be the opportunity that would make him massively famous and hugely successful, but also because he got paid and he was able to escape the financial hell that he was in. Through this incredible experience, Carlo would get paid millions and millions of dollars and would be nominated for multiple Emmy Awards. Now, you might know Carlo by his full name, which was Giancarlo Esposito. But if that name doesn't ring a bell, you very likely do know him from the life-changing role that he portrayed on this show. He was Gus Fring, the chicken shop kingpin from Breaking Bad. On Thursday, June 6th, 2013, a 79-year-old woman named Marilyn Walpole, along with her husband Jim, walked down a busy street in Toronto, Canada. They were on their way back to their hotel after a dinner date at a local Irish pub called PJ O'Brien's. The couple was from Ohio, but they were on the last leg of a cross-country vacation through Canada, and so far the trip had been amazing. And so the retired couple is enjoying their evening, just walking down the road, reminiscing about what an amazing trip it had been. And at some point, as they're